Welcome to Take Off Your Shoes. My name is Reverend Marie Duquette. I'm an ordained minister in the Lutheran tradition, and I believe that where my story, your story, and God's story meet, there is holy ground. The Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 21st chapter, beginning with verse 5. They asked Jesus, "Teacher, when will this be? And what will be the sign that this is about to take place?" And he said, "Beware that you are not led astray, for many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and the time is near. Do not go after them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified, for these things must take place first, but the end will not follow immediately." Then Jesus said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places famines and plagues, and there will be dreadful portents and great signs from heaven. But before all this occurs, they will arrest you and persecute you. They will hand you over to synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors because of my name. This will give you an opportunity to testify. So make up your minds not to prepare your defense in advance. For I will give you words and a wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be betrayed, even by parents and siblings, by relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. You will be hated by all because of my name. But not a hair of your head will perish. By your endurance, you will gain your souls. The Gospel of the Lord. I want to turn back today and look more carefully at the second reading from 2 Corinthians that begins. We want you to know, brothers and sisters, about the grace of God that has been granted to the churches of Macedonia. For during a severe ordeal of affliction, their abundant joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. It's what St. Paul wrote to the church of Corinth. Now, far be it for me to criticize the Apostle Paul from the pulpit, but his boldness here is a bit bold. I mean, let's face it, he's pulling out all the stops to lean hard on the congregation at Corinth to give money. Plain and simple. That's what he's trying to do. He stops just short of asking them to give a kidney. It helps if you know that Macedonia and Corinth were rival cities. They weren't just different cities, they were rivals. Can you imagine trying to raise money by coming to a gathering of Buffalo Bills fans and saying, "Did I mention how much the Kansas City Chiefs have already given to this worthy cause?" That would go over well. No pressure or anything. I just wanted you to know they were really over the top in their generosity. And that's exactly the setup that Paul used to try to get the Corinthians to pony up in their offerings at the same level or better than the Macedonians. He was saying, "You should have seen those Macedonians. Even in the midst of their toughest financial challenges, they gave generously to the Lord. They begged us for a chance to give. Yeah, those Macedonians are amazing, aren't they? And oh, by the way, Titus is bringing this letter to you to see what you Corinthians are going to do." Not only did Paul use the rivalry thing, he also resorted to flattery. Quote, "Now as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in utmost eagerness, and in our love for you, so we want you to excel also in this generous undertaking." What's weird is that Paul hated asking for money. In fact, he refused to take any pay for his work when he was founding the Corinthian church. He insisted on being a lowly tent maker, which really irritated the wealthy members of the congregation. They wanted him to be a respectable philosopher, teacher, and to let them pay him as such, but he refused. He wouldn't take their money even to support his ministry. But now here he is, begging, manipulating, flattering, doing whatever shameless thing needed to be done to get the Corinthians to be generous. Why? What has changed? What had changed was that Paul wasn't asking for his own needs. This time, Paul was asking for the Corinthians to give for the sake of others, for God's mission and priorities. At that time, the Jerusalem church was in terrible poverty. They were starving and desperately needed help. Because of this genuine critical need, Paul was willing to do whatever it would take to get the Corinthians to give. Paul understood one of the most perplexing things that has been a part of our faith since the beginning. It appears that the Holy Spirit has chosen to make you and me the distribution network for God's resources. Amazon has UPS, FedEx, and the U.S. Postal Service. God has you and me. Not always efficient, but it does work. God also doesn't collect taxes and then use them for faith projects. God doesn't lead people to lottery numbers and then coerce them into giving their winnings. At least God hasn't done this to anyone I know, myself included. The Spirit blesses ordinary folks and then trusts us to distribute the gifts we have been given to those in need. And the need right now is great. In these two congregations, Zion, New Hartford, and Trinity, Herkimer, you know that the need is great. 60,000 people have lost their jobs with the federal government alone in the last few months. Schools have lost funding. With the changes to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, commonly known as SNAP, millions of people are losing their health coverage and access to food assistance, including more than 2 million New Yorkers. Currently, 1 in every 3 New Yorkers utilizes Medicaid to access vital health care, while SNAP benefits help 1 in every 7 New Yorkers put food on the table. People of Zion, people of Trinity, the list of people to whom you extend God's grace is long. So long, in fact, that you might sometimes forget all the people and agencies you are supporting already with gifts of time, money, physical goods. Right now alone, Zion is collecting items for the residents of Lutheran Care, socks, lotion, slippers, sweaters, things we take for granted. You are collecting pajamas for children at the House of the Good Shepherd. Financial donations as well as hats, mittens, gloves, and scarves for the Bohn Center, who distributes them to families living below the poverty line. And then there's the grants you extend from your endowment fund, 1,000, which help churches in the upstate New York Synod purchase an ambulance already for Zimbabwe. Another one is half paid for. You gave grants for chaplaincy and music therapy for patients, for the Seeds of Hope food pantry, monies to make improvements to keep children who attend Apple Tree Preschool in this building so that their environment in which they learn has adequate sound, and resources to encourage their physical growth, and monies which support students at the other end of the spectrum through Lutheran campus ministries at Syracuse University. Fun fact, preschoolers and first and second year college students are the most curious about matters of faith than any other ages. Meanwhile, your sister congregation, Trinity Lutheran Church in Herkimer, is helping the Hunger Coalition at the Syracuse Airport, which provides a lounge for traveling veterans to rest and provides for their families during the holidays when they are away. They're collecting toys, clothes for elementary school children, presents for residents of the Lutheran home, food donations, baking supplies. They serve dinner to people in the community every single week. On Thanksgiving Day, they will join with other churches in Herkimer to provide dinner for 400 people, a tradition they continue year after year after year on Thanksgiving Day. And that doesn't even include the Loaves and Fishes Warming Center, which provides those without a home with a place to stay warm, to shower, to get clothing, to eat meals with others, to find community. Loaves and Fishes, by the way, is currently looking for a new building to continue this work and gathering donations for when they find it. Churches have stewardship committees who do the work few people want. They ask you for financial contributions that support these ministries of the church. And sometimes when we look at our churches, Zion and Trinity, which are both well over 200 or 100 years old, Zion coming up on 200, it is easy to focus on the expense of the building. And it's easy to forget the ministries that flow forth from within our sanctuaries because of the generosity of people like you who understand that to be a disciple of Jesus Christ is to care for the widow, the orphan, and the stranger, to clothe the naked, to visit those in prison, feed the hungry, accompany those for whom loneliness and undeserved shame is a constant companion. The people of Corinth did not have a lot of money. Frankly, neither did the church in Macedonia. But they had faith, and that faith drove them to respond to Paul's stewardship campaign in such a way that the church continued long after they had died. In fact, was here for us today. Recently, Yehiel Curry was installed as the first African American bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. On the day he was elected, he spoke to the thousands of people who had mentored him, supported him, saw in him a great leader, and finally elected him. Here is what he said. Around 1997, I stumbled into St. Stephen's Church on the south side of Chicago. It was a synodically authorized worship community, which means it was unconventional. So they were worshiping on Saturdays. I went home and got my wife and our daughter, Shemaiah, and returned. I didn't even realize that while I was caught up in the music and the word and the experience of being in this community of faith, my wife had already gone and joined the church that I would be called to lead before I even did. He said, on that day, I thought to myself, we found our place. There is a place for us here. Bishop Curry went through seminary via the TEAM program, a program in which students study while they are serving in a church. They have a mentor who guides them. They attend retreats of intensive study in place of traditional classes organized by semester. The goal is ordination, not a master's degree. When Bishop Curry was elected, he also said, I am what a return in your investment looks like. Even if you don't realize it, every time we gave our benevolence to the church, I was just a guy sitting in a pew who had never really learned the language of discernment. I just knew I had this feeling. While I was teacher, I was still trying to figure out what this feeling was, and I didn't get it teaching. And then I became a social worker, and I didn't get it there. And then I went into business for myself, and I didn't feel it there. It wasn't until I was in the church that I said, I could do this for the rest of my life. Every year, in the cycle of the church, stewardship committees ask you to make a commitment to giving an amount of your choice to support the ministries of the church. And when you do this, I want you to remember that your generosity is not just to buy copy paper and pave a parking lot. The return on your investment looks like people being fed. It's people being protected from the cold when the snow piles up and the temperatures stay below freezing all night long, and we watch it from the inside of our warm houses. The return on your investment is giving jobs to staff so that they can follow their callings, and giving funds to agencies who are doing God's work in New Hartford and Herkimer, but also in upstate New York, in the United States, and around this world. This church is so much bigger than those who gather in sanctuaries this morning. This church is one whose ministries seek out the forgotten and tell them, there is a place for you here. I realize that not everyone will be able to pledge a dollar amount now or in the days to come. There is no shame if you are not in a position to do so. And There is great value in whatever you can bring. Financial contribution, time, talent, a pair of mittens for a child. The church would grind to a halt without volunteers just as surely as it would cease to exist if there was no money to support its outreach to those in need. As Paul did back in the day, I invite you to consider how you are being called to serve at this moment in your life, and to remember that disciples of Jesus Christ do not live with an outlook of scarcity, self-preservation, or fear. We are a people driven by the Holy Spirit to live lives of abundance, generosity, and courage. For in the words of St. Matthew, where our treasure is, there our heart will be also.